Good morning. Oh, it's not morning. See? Get ready to say good morning. Good evening,
Oh,
ladies.
goodness. I hear you.
Oh, listen, I'm over here talking about good morning. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Girl Talk After Dark with
Yes.
me and Nyisha.
Good
Um,
evening, ladies.
yes, let me just
Get
um
myself pulled
make
up.
sure we're live in the group. I see some people already on. Let me just pull up and see where you are. Say hey girl, hey to let us know you're here.
That's right.
And let us know if you're watching from the Facebook group. Let us know if you're watching from YouTube.
Yep,
There we go.
let us know if you're watching. My hop over. I'm gonna try that new feature we were talking about too, Detra. It looked like it's giving me that button.
Oh, check and see if you
Yeah, we're
can.
gonna see if it'll do it.
Let's see. I think I did this
Good evening,
already.
good evening.
Hey, Leilani, how are you, love? I see you on YouTube. Who else is here? So we are just checking in to make sure. Hey, Danietta, how are you? I see you watching FB and YouTube. Listen, you like just in case.
Listen, covering all the angles.
Yes. So yes. So we are just making sure we're good. We had some minor technical difficulties.
I'm telling you.
All right, let me see. Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna take this here and do like that. So how are y'all this evening? We're just making sure all is well. I'm gonna share this link down in the other page to let folks know. Let me see, click here to join us. All right. So how y'all doing? What y'all got going on this evening? How has your week been? Um,
Mm-hmm.
let's see. Let's see. Hey Turkio, good evening on YouTube. Let's see. Yeah, the Peach family. I see you on YouTube. All right. So I see we got some people on YouTube. I love it. Y'all come on in.
Gonna
And so,
try.
yeah, so for those of you, if this is your first time joining us, we were live last Saturday for our first Girl Talk After Dark. And this conversation was launched back in January, and it really was just a discussion at the time around during the 21 days of prayer, which we hosted during the first 21 days of January 2023. There were some conversations and some
Mm-hmm.
topics and things that came up that during the time of me talking to the various speakers, it was kind of like, man, like this would be really cool if we could like have another conversation. Like this should be a whole nother conversation outside of 21 days of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And life got busy. We life, all the things, and we kept talking about it. And as we're transitioning into I Speak Life Live, which is my 3-day event in December, but even after that, starting to gear up for 21 days of prayer in January, we started talking about let's maybe do like a few girl talk after dark, just to see how people would respond to it, to see if people wanted something like this. And so that's really where Girl Talk After Dark came from. And so we and I am not going to take credit for it. Nyisha and I, we talk not always every day, but at least multiple times a week. And she was like, hey, like, maybe we should do a Girl Talk After Dark. And I was like, you know what, let's do it. And I think just taking the pressure off of having a script. So this is not a scripted conversation. a very informal conversation, and it's not teaching. And
Yep.
so, we might drop some nuggets here and there. But this really is just a community chat. Like, this is just an opportunity for us to come together and just kick
Mhm.
it. So,
Yeah.
and so we may be back. I think we said we will come back next week. So this is kind of like, how we're doing, what do they call those? The shows, the pilots. We're
Yes.
doing a Girl Talk After Dark pilot. And so just kind of testing it out and to see, last week it went really well, and the ladies started to kind of come in. And so I know
Mhm.
locally here, there are a couple of events happening. Like, this is strictly between now and I think maybe like mid-December is gala time. And so I know there are events happening. I know there
Mhm.
was a gala last week, there's a gala this week, there's an event next week. Obviously, then there's Thanksgiving, and then the week after that, even in addition to my event, I know there's something else going on. So this is a really busy time. And so I know people are gonna like probably peek in and out. So with that being said,
Mhm.
how are y'all doing? Like, how was your week? How are things? Nyisha, do you want to add anything? What are some things as it relates to just the thoughts around Girl Talk After Dark, and us connecting with them, over the next couple of weeks as we go into the event? Do you have any thoughts around that or anything you want to share?
No, just like you said, hey, we're piling it out. It's a laid back conversation. I'm excited for us to be getting it going and doing it. And so everybody's feedback is going to be wonderful. And I'm looking forward to a great conversation and the ladies engaging.
Yeah, same here. And so how was you guys' week? Like, I see you all here. And if not, Nyisha and I, y'all know we can have a good conversation, and then y'all could pop in
Please.
at any given time, which may end up happening, which I'm fine with. But how are y'all doing? How are things as we um lean into like the last, I would say we might be around like 6 weeks of the year. I don't know how many weeks, but I think it might be like 6 or 7 weeks of the year. How are y'all doing? What are your challenges? How are you staying reflective? Like, normally, and it's interesting because I think I was having a moment today, and it's either today or yesterday, and I said to myself, now I see why I used to do 30 days of thanks.
Ah.
And so for those of you who don't know, if I do like this really, and you see back there, my book, 30 Days of Thanks, for many years, I used to read my book live every single day for the whole month of November. And it was really and the reason the book was written was to remind us that there's something to be thankful for. Like, even in the midst of life happening, even in the
Yeah.
midst of the valleys, even in the midst, and at the time that I wrote the book, I was heavily into just family stuff, and
Mhm.
going through some things with my family, and I was really feeling defeated, y'all, and just kind of like, okay, Lord, like, you be feeling like, Lord, am I being punked? Like, this can't possibly be. And I remember God just kind of like snapping me out of it and was like, okay, you know what, enough of this, like, we're gonna have a conversation. And literally for 30 days, when I initially wrote the book, which it didn't start out as a book, it was
Mhm.
a devotional, and it was just, and so I invited people in that conversation. And so at any rate, I just remember like yesterday, it had to be yesterday, because I think I was like in the bathroom or walking by the bathroom, but I feel like the bathroom, it was somewhere around there. And I just
Mhm.
was like, I get it. Like, I get why, and not necessarily why it was November, but I understand the power of just taking the time to sit in gratitude
Oh
and to
yeah.
sit in thinking about, like, when everything, it seems like everything really isn't going well, there still really is so much to be grateful for. And so it
Mhm.
starts to shift your perspective, and it starts to even shift your mood, you know what I'm saying, to
Mhm.
the point of
Mhm.
where you like, man, like, it ain't good, child, but it ain't as bad as it could be, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't know, what do you think, Naisha?
Well, I think that is so interesting. And, I love gratitude, gratefulness, is so major, and it's, it can become cliche,
Yeah.
especially this time of the year, but it is very true. Exactly what you said. The power of gratitude is scientifically proven,
Hmm.
that's why it's actually one of the in positive psychology, they talk about these 6 happiness traits or
Okay.
habits, right? And practicing gratitude daily is one of those traits and one of
Hmm.
those habits to help cultivate more happiness and more joy,
Oh,
because
wow.
it does actually shift. There's things that it does to your being to shift you from that more negative state to a
Yeah.
more positive spirit and positive mindset. It helps to shift you. So it is so important and so vital to sit in gratitude and gratefulness. And so I remember when you first, I can't even say did the book, because if I remember correctly, it was
Mhm.
like an email course
Yep.
thing. We got it in our inboxes
Yep.
when you first, I remember that, and
Yep.
getting that every day, and then to watch the journey and watch it evolve, then to the book, and then to doing 30 days of thanks when you would do it live. But it
Yep.
is so important, because we have also the tendency to think that like the abundance of things comes, or the success of things comes, and then we'll be grateful, when really
Yes.
it's the opposite. Like the
Hmm.
gratitude and gratefulness sets and cultivates the space for the abundance and for success, um so it's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that reminder because I think a lot of times we have to be reminded, and my book is based off of 1 Thessalonians 5 and
Mhm.
18. In all
Mhm.
things give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning
Right.
you.
Mhm.
And I always share that because it doesn't say in good times. It says in all things, right? Um,
Wisdom.
in all things,
Yeah.
and so even in, whatever that, either it's a quote or a book that starts off like it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I don't know
Uh-huh.
what it is, but
Uh-huh.
um,
There was a
but
tale of
it,
two cities.
yeah, I don't know, child.
Mhm.
I just remember that quote, you know what I
Right.
mean? And I think in the best of times we give thanks, and in the worst of times we
Most
give
of the
thanks.
time.
And so, for those of you who are watching,
Yep.
what are your thoughts around that? What are your
Mhm.
thoughts around, gratitude and, having a mindset of thankfulness when life really is life in? I think that's a real conversation, that everything isn't always perfect. And I think the reality is it's never perfect. Can we just
Right.
like
Right.
cut that out? It's
Right.
never perfect. And
Mhm.
so recognizing that it's never perfect,
Exactly.
um, even in the imperfection, there are some good imperfect days and some bad imperfect days. And so I think a lot of times the assumption is, because we see the highlight reel and we see what people are going through, and we see, or we assume what people are going through, that nobody's going through what we're going through. And so I just wonder, like, how do you all stay in gratitude? Um,
Mhm.
how do
Mhm.
you stay in a mind of appreciation and thankfulness when
Mhm.
sometimes everything around you is refuting that, right? When
Mhm.
everything around you is not necessarily working the way you thought it would work. Like, how are y'all doing that? And y'all can share in the comments. We can see the comments. Again, Nyisha and I can talk, like, so this conversation is going to go on whether y'all respond or not. But what does that look like for you all? Because, and I would ask you, I'll ask you first and then I'll come behind you.
Mhm.
But what are some things that you do to stay in gratefulness, you know what I mean, and to stay
Mhm.
in a mindset of gratitude and thankfulness when life is lifing?
Mhm.
And it's, I think, not just a moment, but like there's the extended lifing where it's like, okay, how long is this supposed to last? I thought there was a limit to this. And we're like, you know what I mean? Like, how are you able to do that?
Yeah. First of all, it can be a challenge, especially like you said, when you have those things where it feels like life been lifing for a prolonged period of time. It
Yeah.
seems like the seasons outside the window have changed, but but it feels like I'm still in this space or this thing
Yes.
I'm still dealing with. It
Yes.
definitely can be a challenge. And there's a couple of things that I remember. One, when we talk about shifting out of that space, we're really talking about what are we focusing on
Mm.
in that situation, really,
Yeah.
right? So if we have a situation that happens and we're focusing on, I didn't get such and such and such, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that's what our focus is.
Yeah.
But then we have to sometimes shift our focus. Well, what did I get?
Yeah.
What was the opportunity that I stepped into? What gift did I get out of this situation? What is the gift and opportunity in the situation that I'm dealing with? That's
Yeah.
one of the big things I do. What is the gift and opportunity?
Mm.
Even when it is like this whole situation feels like fingernails on a chalkboard, I say, Lord, what is the gift and
Yeah.
opportunity in this situation? And then the other thing I do sometimes when I really need to shift myself, I
That's
practice the
good.
3-to-1 ratio.
Mm.
And so whatever that thing is that I'm struggling with, that I'm frustrated about, that has me down, I do try to come up with three things to counter that, because
Mm.
there's this research that says that for every like negative thought or negative thing, it takes three positives to counter that energy and that, impact of it. So even if it's like a specific thing, even with my children at times, right?
Yeah.
Okay, my child is six, is like being very teenagerish, or being very with, and I'm frustrated in that space. I'm like, what are three things about this child of mine that I absolutely adore, or that I'm
I love
absolutely
that.
grateful? So I practice those two things. What is the gift and opportunity? That's definitely for the prolonged, and practice that 3-to-1 ratio, trying to identify those three things, at least three things connected to the situation that I'm currently focused on in a negative way, that I can find gratitude for.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
taking notes. So I'm writing this in so that the ladies can get it. Um, let's
Because
see.
it's tricky.
Let's see. In connection to
Mm-hmm.
the one, I'm just gonna say the one bad thing. I'll just say, or
Yes.
negative. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, because whatever it is, we usually focused on whatever negative aspect of whatever happened. It's
Mm-hmm.
so funny because I had this conversation with one of my niecey poos this evening as they were leaving, because she was upset that her baby sister had a toy of hers.
Mm-hmm.
She was on her about, don't lose my toy, don't lose my toy. She didn't lose the toy, but apparently one of the shoes is missing. And we're not even sure that the baby girl had both shoes originally. That one shoe popped up. And then she started having a meltdown over the fact that the shoe was missing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And just, God, but it's a shoe and it's small. And I'm like, but what was your desire? You asked her not to lose the toy.
Yeah.
So I was trying to work with her to shift her, like, let's move and find that you're happy and grateful that you still have your
Yeah.
toy, and maybe the shoe will pop up. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's so important.
It's interesting you say that, because anytime something is lost of mine, or that I can't find it, I will immediately, and it may not necessarily be gratitude, but
Mhm.
I immediately go into, okay, you know what, Lord, I know that I'm going to find it. I just need to walk away from the situation. And at some point it'll pop up. And when I
Mhm.
tell you, over the last, I'm going to say at least the last year, maybe two, but I know specifically over the last year, it was something most recently, and I can't remember what it was, but
Okay.
whatever it was, I couldn't find it. And I was like, okay, I know it's around here somewhere. I saw it,
Mhm.
whatever. And the old me, which is not that recent, not that old child, she's recent. I would start panicking, or I would just start getting frustrated. Like, I know I had this, you know how we do. And I
Mhm.
just started like responding differently, right? And so
Mhm.
for those of you, watching,
Yeah.
again, we're talking about gratitude. We're talking about how do we stay in a space of gratitude. when life
Yeah.
is lifing, when we want to throw the whole thing in the garbage, like it's like just take the whole thing and just throw it away.
Yeah.
This is, we're not talking about light stuff, but like when it's you're on like an extended state of lifing.
Oh
And
yeah.
how do you find gratitude? And so a couple of the questions that Nyisha shared was, her answers were in the form of a question like, what is the gift and the opportunity in this situation? And so, how do you find the good in it? Like, what's the opportunity and the gift in this? Like, what am I learning about myself? What am I learning about others? What is God trying to show me in this? Like, sometimes you may just have to pause for a moment and say, okay, Lord, what is it that I'm supposed to be learning in this? Like, it's not what I thought, but, there's a gift in this, right? Maybe you're being shown a specific person, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's like, ooh, like, okay, I get a chance to actually see, this person for who they are. And had this not happened, I would have never known. Like, I'm sure many
Yes.
of us can look at those circumstances and be like, ooh, child, like, I didn't want it to happen, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I see you.
Mm-hmm.
I see you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing she talked about was the 3-in-1 ratio. So this is really for those of you who are just joining. But the 3-in-1 ratio, what 3 positive things
Yeah.
that you can kind of highlight from that situation or that person, 3 to 1, right? And so you've got
Yeah.
this negative situation, right? And so she used the example of her teenager, and sometimes they could be teenaging, right? And then also the example of her niece, but it's like specifically with her son, you know while the son is sunning, right, and is teenagering, what are some 3 characteristics that you find that you can point out that would highlight the benefits
Mhm.
and the positive aspects, of that
Mhm.
person, that situation, or that thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I see Leilani on YouTube is saying, I think a big thing is being able to have family and support. I think I realize that as bad as the thing is, I have support to get through it, and I'm very
Mhm.
grateful for that. I
Oh yeah.
also think about the fact that my situation could be worse. Yes, and yes. And
Yes.
so it's so
Yes.
funny
Yes.
because I think day one is it could be worse. I think that was the first thing um that the Lord talked to me about when I was going through that situation.
Woo.
Like, well, you do know it could be worse. And I was like, what in the world? Yeah, it
I know
said
that's
so
right.
day one was what didn't happen. Um,
Mhm.
and so, but it was really around the fact that like it could be worse, like being thankful that it isn't as bad as it could be. And so I think sometimes we forget that it really could be worse. And when you think about, and sometimes maybe just think about like, what if it was worse? And then you'd be like, you know what? I'm good. I am good. Hey,
Yeah.
Montella, how are you? I'm glad to see you back with us this evening. So, so anybody else who's watching, how are you? How do you manage and maintain gratefulness when life is lifing? And I mean, like really lifing. And so this is kind of what we were talking about, Montella. And I think I saw AZ pop in. I don't know if she was able to stay in. But just, as we're like closing out the year, and as, sometimes we get to a point and we realize that things are not the way we thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? Like we had this plan in January, we had the plan in February and in March, right? We might have even had it all the way up to June, child. And then all of a sudden, stuff just wasn't working out. And so now we're in November, and it's like, man, like this is not what I expected. And so, you may or may not be excited about the holidays. And so maybe the holidays is something that kind of can cheer
Yeah.
you up, but maybe not. And so how do you, when it's not what you expected, how do you maintain that? Um, over these next, not necessarily even over, for the rest of the year, but just in general, because life is going to happen. Like, I think we have to be honest
Mhm.
about the fact that life is going to happen. Life is going to life. And to be in a space where even when it doesn't work out the way we want it to work out, what are the tools, you know what I mean, or the things that we can pull from in order to stay in that space?
Mhm.
And so Leilani talked about having family and a support system, and I think that that's huge. And I think
That is huge.
it doesn't always have to be blood family, right? Like, just I think being in community, like, and have,
Yes.
sometimes it's like, well, what if I don't have family? And it's like, well, do you have community? And that may not be, you may have to find something else, but what does that look like, you know? um
I
so
think
yeah.
that's important because I mean, there's so many things that we deal with that for whatever reason, the enemy in our ear, us in our own ear, we have the tendency to feel alone in
Mm-hmm.
dealing with it or carrying it. So, support in whatever fashion that you have is very, very important. Someone who can support you in whatever way. Sometimes it's just holding space for you. That is very, very major. Because as you talk about things that you're dealing with, you don't want that kind of smothering of where you are,
Yeah.
and how you in having space to be able to process it at the same time. So I agree with her. That is so important. That support is very vital.
Yes. I'm just seeing, I'm seeing the people, just looking to see who's live on which platform. Because I'm technically like on both. And even though I can see,
Yes.
I can't see who's live on YouTube, but I can kind of see who's live in the Facebook group
Right.
and try to shout them out because they don't pop up on the screen.
Okay.
Vontella says, I pray so much. My children support me and check on me. I love that, child. Prayer is a mean thing. And I think sometimes prayer gets a bad rep because people be like, like at some point, you got to stop praying and start doing. And I feel like, yes, I think that we definitely don't want to use prayer as a scapegoat for, execution and activity. But sometimes prayer is the most powerful thing, I would say, next to gratitude or in addition to gratitude, because sometimes your prayer can just be a prayer of thanks, right? Of thank,
Yes.
and just thanking.
Right.
Sometimes shifting your mindset, for me, sometimes that's a prayer. Like, that's all I pray because I need to shift. And so I'm like, Lord, I thank you. Like, I thank you for, and I just start listing stuff down, and I keep going until I can feel a shift in how I'm feeling and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like prayer definitely gets a bad rep sometimes because sometimes I just feel like people really don't understand the power of prayer. You know what I mean? What do you think, Nyisha?
I think you're right, and I think that we see prayer in a one-dimensional way. I think people who feel like that most of the time. Now, I'm big on that whole waiting. Don't keep talking about you waiting on God. You ain't at the bus stop. You ain't got to wait on God. God ain't got to catch up with you. However, looking at that concept about prayer, I think most of the time, if they're feeling that way, it's because they think prayer is only about asking for stuff,
Yeah.
asking for this, give me this, fix this. And that is just one facet. That's one facet of our prayer. Prayer, like you said, you can have a prayer of just thankfulness, a prayer
Yeah.
of gratitude. The thing, Lord, I'm thankful for. God, thank you for keeping me in this situation. Thank you for allowing me to be stable in my mind. Like, you can have a complete prayer of thanks. You can also, be praying in a spirit of declaration.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other side of that. So I think people may feel that way, but I feel like most of the time they may be looking at prayer one dimensionally.
Yeah.
That it goes beyond just asking for, can you fix this? You know,
Yeah.
most of the time it's more than that anyway. Even when we go to God and say, can you fix it? It's like, like I'm fixing you. Can
You
we
like,
take
you
a
want me to
break?
fix what? You want me to fix
Can we
what?
just fix this and then get back to fixing me
We
after
like,
we fix it?
no.
No,
Mm-mm.
no,
He's
no,
like,
no,
no.
no.
It's kind of like the saying that says, like, when those moments when you ask God to change the situation, he doesn't change it because he's looking to change you. And so, and I think, like you said, that whole dimension, it's a different dimension of prayer and a different understanding of prayer, as opposed to kind of like gimme, gimme, gimme. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Prayer is so much more than that. And then there's
Yeah.
just the conversational space with God. You
Mm-hmm.
know what, God, this is a beautiful day. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good today.
Yes.
I'm so grateful having you in my life. Just that part of relationship with him, no different than the relationships we have in our life. I love
Yep.
my parents, but every conversation I have with my mom and dad, it shouldn't be give me, can you fix, can you pick up, can you,
It's like
so
at
that's
some point they're like,
right. It should be more than that, and so that's we have to grow and expand our understanding of prayer and our practice in prayer,
yeah,
to engulf that full relationship that we're building with God.
I agree. I'm just sharing on Facebook, um, letting the folks know we're live in the other areas and they can come and join us over here. Those of you who are live in here, I think I saw let me see. Let me go in here. I saw Nisi, I saw Vantella, there's AZ.
Mm-hmm.
Um and somebody else had popped in.
I love that.
Yeah, you can read that.
Yeah, I love AZ says, I've learned different ways to pray as I learned different characteristics of him.
That's good.
Amen to that. Yes, yes, yes. When you get to know him in different facets, then you understand praying to him. And that's relationship though.
Yep.
That's what I feel from her whole comment. It's like, oh, that's relationship. When you get to learn those different characteristics of him and
Mm-hmm.
experience those different characteristics of him, that's just a growing relationship.
Mm-hmm. And
I
I think
love
that also comes from a keen understanding of his word, right?
it.
And a
Mhm.
connection. And so it's one thing to read about the word, it's another thing to experience it. And
Mhm.
then also, I think once you come into relationship with him through prayer, you get to see it like in a greater dimension. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because it's like, we can, sing, right? It's like, it's one thing, like I remember this song and I remember a couple years ago, and the song was whatever it takes, I'm all in.
Mm. Mhm.
And I remember like when I was going through what I was going through, and I started to say, child, we don't even have no clue what we be singing.
No. We don't. Child,
We
please.
don't have no clue what we be singing. Like whatever it, like you saying it, and it's like one of those whatever it takes. Dun, 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 I'm
Oh
all
yeah, because you feeling good and you
you
going.
feel, and then all of a sudden he say whatever it takes, huh?
Well, let me grab this. Let's shake
Mhm.
up that. Let's remove this person. Let's what? You like, wait a minute. Wait,
You
God,
like that ain't what I meant.
what in the world?
Yes. And so I think when you finally get to a point where you start to make the connection or you're in a thing that
Yes.
brings greater revelation of what you're singing, you start to learn the different characteristics of him and how he has shown up. And even just in, you like, oh goodness, this gives a whole different meaning now. Like,
Ooh, child.
you know what I'm saying? And so
Mhm.
it's just, and it's another song, and I did a TikTok off of it, but it was something, I can't remember the song, but it was basically like, I'll go through the fire and I'll, whatever, and you be thinking like, did I just say that?
Listen, 'cause I done had a couple trips in the fire, and I ain't asked for them in the first place. I don't know how quick I'm gonna be to ask for for another one.
Wow.
Let me tell you something. I am good for being in service, and there be a song, and they may get to some lines, and I'm like, I'm like, wait now. And I'm like that both ways. It's like, hey, what am I saying I'm doing? And then what am I also declaring over myself? I'm like, listen now, I'm not gonna keep talking about I'm like I'm broke down, dusted, and disgusted, and I can't do
Oh
nothing.
yeah.
Like I can't keep. Like I'm so sorry. I'm not. So there's been time. I be like, so it works both ways. I'd be like, wait now.
You like, hold on now. We ain't we are definitely not claiming that.
Right. I'm like, okay. Mm. Let me clap my hands and
Mm-hmm.
rock
Yeah.
until we get past this little part right here.
Child, listen,
Yeah.
and then I think if we can be real, and then the other part of that is I think when you start reading the word and the word starts challenging you in areas where you like, nah, I really don't really want to talk to them. I'm really not trying to reconcile.
Oh goodness.
We don't want no reconciliation. I'm not trying to. Can we be? Yeah, I thought. Well, this is Girl Talk After Dark, so we just being real. Like there are moments where you have conversation, which I think is why, again, tying it back to the original talk around finding gratitude, because there are some moments where you like, nah, like actually, they can actually stay in the fire
and walk off into the fog.
Mm-hmm. They can just keep going. They can burn all the way up. Right.
Okay, God.
Somebody used to say, they be like, oh, they can just go in what they say, go jump in a small pond and drown. Why don't you just go jump in a small pond and drown? And it's like, you just in your emotions, you know what I mean? Like we just like, especially when you're in a space where you feel violated, you feel abused, you feel attacked, you feel taken advantage of, you feel like how much more before, and it's so funny because Lovey Ajayi Jones, are you familiar with Lovey?
Yeah.
So I'm on her email list. And so she sent an email out either today or yesterday, sometime this week. And I just so happened to check it. And she was like, she said, I'm just going to be honest with y'all. She says, I'm not down with our forever first lady, Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high. She says, no, she says, sometimes you got to go gutter. She said, sometimes you got to go gutter. She said, because some of these people, she said, some of these people do need to get cussed out. And she was like, and so if you hear about something where I done cuss somebody out, she said, I probably did. She said, but that just means that they deserved it. She said, folks ain't going to continue to just be talking to us and popping in our DMs and taking advantage of us and X, Y, and Z without, and so I cracked up because the reality is like, I know we love to talk about turning the other cheek and, giving your coat to your enemies and all of that other kind of stuff. But real talk is sometimes it's like, no, like let them freeze.
I can remember, and I'm so thankful the Lord has worked on me years ago. And I mean, we still have areas, and I still have things that I'm like, Lord, listen now. I'll be like, now your child. Listen, now I don't bother folks. So when they come bothering me, everybody act crazy when Nyisha let them know that that's a line they just crossed, and it be the subtlest way, like this. I'm doing it in the subtlest way. But I can remember back in the day, there's some, go way back a little bit. Probably not that far, but go back. I can remember saying about some folks, you know what? If you were in the desert dying of thirst and asked me for water, I'd give you peanut butter instead. I was there. I was there at a point.
Wait, not peanut butter.
Yes, I would. I'm serious. So the Lord is good. You hear me?
Oh, goodness.
He does a work in us. Do you understand?
I get it.
He does a work in us. And I am very mindful of how I respond to people because I don't have a play fight space.
Oh, yeah.
I tell my kid, like, I wasn't one of them play fighting people. I used to feel like people try to play fight with you because they were trying to see what your moves were. And so I'm not a play. If you are a threat or if you're coming, I figure you're trying to take my life. That's just my thought. Like you're trying to upend everything. And so I'll be like, okay, God, listen, now I don't have that gray area. So I need you to help me in this response. Like, am I reading this email correctly? I need you to help me. Okay, let me send it to somebody I know that is very level-headed. They gonna tell me, and maybe, and I'm not even gonna say nothing. I'm just gonna let them read it and let them tell me what their response is, so I can check myself. Because right now, I'm feeling like this person just tried to club me in my kneecaps. I just need to know.
Be
what
like,
we
am
call
I overreacting? I just need to know if it's me or if it's them.
this.
If it's me, then okay, I'll own that.
And even in those situations, I am learning to even be grateful. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a situation recently. You know the situation, one of the situations I had that ongoing situation with that person. I'm like, I can't figure out what the person issue is with me. I have learned even through that to be grateful that I'm not struggling with what that person was struggling with.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
I was having to check myself in the response, right? But I was like, thank thank God I'm not in that space.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not in that mental space, that I
Yeah,
don't feel like I have to walk around living like that.
yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Lord
yeah.
have mercy on her, and that's it. Because I know I'm thankful I'm not there.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
that's where
know,
like the compassion and the grace, and I think growth, right, comes in where you really do start to think like there's the saying that says sometimes, like a situation that you might be having with the person, a lot of times it says more about them than it does about you. And so when you can remember, right, that a lot of times it really isn't about you, right? It isn't about, it's about them and their idiosyncrasies and their insecurities and their trauma and whatever it is that they've gone through. A lot of times the what is being mirrored really is
Mhm.
no reflection of us.
Right.
And so a lot of times it does take growth and it does take prayer and it does take, 30 days of thanks to, recharge and rewire your mind so you can see things from a different perspective. And I think even with
Right.
prayer and having that relationship with God where God can check you and say, you do know, like, this don't have nothing to do with you. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, sit yourself down. This don't have nothing to do with you. And then sometimes, I don't know why God just dropped this in my spirit. He will cause you ever been in a space, and any of you can respond, where God will cause you to be in a space where you kind of become the poster child for whatever the circumstances are. And so you don't really get to fight back. You don't get a chance to get revenge or any of those
Right.
things. And I think about Hosea, and
Hmm.
his marriage to Gomar, and
Mm.
how, he, as a prophet, his
Hmm.
assignment was to marry a prostitute.
Mhm. Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that was
Yeah.
God's instruction. And the whole purpose of the story and of his life was literally to show the children of Israel what they were doing. Like, it was literally, when you see Gomar, and it's kind of like the conversation that the prophet Nathan has with David, and he starts
David.
talking to him, and David is like, well, who is this person? We need to, like, off with his head. And Nathan is like, bro, that's you.
It's you, bro. That's it. It's you.
And so I think sometimes, God is, so when we just going back to that with Azzy's comment around the different characteristics of him in that relationship, sometimes God really can put us in spaces where our life becomes the storyline for God's grace and his glory. And
Oh
as
yeah.
much as we don't like it, like, right, when we talk about lifing, it's like, man, like, did you have to, like, do it that way? But the reality is, God is like, because Hosea and Gomar's life, that whole scenario really had nothing to do with Hosea and everything to do with the children of Israel. And so what happens when what
Mhm.
God is doing in your life really doesn't have anything to do with you and everything to do with the people he's trying to get their attention?
I call that, that's that big yes. That's that second yes. That's going back to like that song that you were talking about. You okay, God, whatever it takes.
I'm
I'm
all
all
in.
in. And
Mm-hmm.
that big yes, when we give that yes, like, yes, God, use me, whatever you need me to do. I'm your vessel. Well, guess
Mm-hmm. Since we on that topic.
what? Let me tell you what I need a vessel for.
Mm-hmm.
No, 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 no. I don't need no nice pretty platter for the meal over there. I don't need no, 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 no. No, no, no.
Since we on the topic,
Listen,
let's
listen.
have this conversation. This is what I need you doing.
So it is so often like that. And that is the other thing that people, even when we see people going through things,
Yeah.
we don't always understand that there are, because when God knows that he can put you in a place, space, or situation,
Mm-hmm.
and you will minister and pour into the XYZ person that's going to cross your path, versus somebody who would not, they would be too indulged in what
Mm-hmm.
they're going through,
Mm-hmm.
right? I remember a few years ago, a pastor friend of ours, suffered a stroke.
Mm.
And he was, healthy, like you can see a lot of times with some people who have strokes, you don't see it coming per se. And he was going through, this rehab situation. And the whole time we were talking to him, and he understood it very quickly about who is it at this facility that I'm supposed to impart to,
Mm.
right? Who this stroke is not about, wasn't about him.
Yeah.
It was that whoever this person was that he needed to encounter, right?
Yeah.
Needed to have an experience that would reignite and re-anchor them in God. And so you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It's a lot like that.
Yeah.
A lot more than we realize.
Yeah.
It's like that. And that
It is.
don't line up with like pretty what the world say it should look like. Because sometimes that means God have you hopping and bouncing over here and there, or doing this thing and that thing, and people may be looking at you like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Okay, vessel.
Yeah.
you
That's
know.
good. That's good. Leilani says, I've been reading a book called It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lisa Turkhurst.
Yeah.
I feel like this book relates to my situation so much, but this woman never knew how many people would go through the same situation she went through. She never knew how her situation would help people. Yes.
Yes.
And I can't remember if she wrote that before or after her forgiveness book. I think that was
I
the
think that was
next book.
before.
It was
I
before.
think that was before. It's
Okay.
not supposed to be
Um,
this way. I think was before.
Okay. And then the whole book around forgiveness. But I think I would imagine, like, isn't that how it's supposed to be? Like, I think if, like you said, if we could pick,
Okay,
we wouldn't
Lalani said
pick.
it was after.
It was after. Okay.
Yeah.
If we could pick, you know what I'm saying, what we wanted to go through and how we wanted to go through, I'm sure we wouldn't pick what we done been through. You know what I mean? Which is why sometimes, even like it's like, okay, Lord, who am I supposed to talk to? Who am I supposed to be open to? Like, even just in those instances. And so for those of you who are watching, what are your thoughts around that? You know what I mean? That, like, you know, um, when life is lifing, and we're trying to maintain an attitude of gratitude, and a mindset, of thankfulness, and you just feel like you're asking me to do something that under normal circumstances like would be crazy. Like, I
Right.
remember the first time I read Hosea, and I would think to myself, like, I can't imagine what this man is going through and what he's thinking, but he was obedient. He was extremely obedient. Now, mind you, I'm sure he walked away like many of us would and be like, I don't even know why you got me doing this. Like, this is just crazy. And you got me going after this woman, and she done had these, and it never says
Right.
that the kids were not his, but the way that they were named, it was as if that she had children by these men, two other children by these other men. And God said, go get her, pay whatever the ransom is. Because at that time, because she had, gone outside of the marriage, and, was from, in our term, she was hoeing around.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, go get her. Like, go get her. And she had become basically like a slave to whoever she was with,
Right.
like a servant of some sort. And he said, go get her. And I read it years ago. Now I'm gonna have to go back and read it again because I'm intrigued with just getting a new revelation around it.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, like, how do we, how do you reconcile, right? How do you reconcile, you know, and to some extent, I would just say like you just kind of trust that God knows what he's doing, because in some instances there is no reconciling and making sense of it. You just kind of say, okay, God, I trust you. And I believe, and I can't, I'm thinking like, I know, when God was talking to him, because he was a prophet, God was basically saying that, like, he told him, like, your life is an example of how the children of Israel have treated me. And so in those instances, as hard as it is, you kind of go along with it, because like your job at that point, at some point in time, is not only to live it, but then to go and to share a prophetic message. And so for many of you, again, just kind of tying this back into our initial conversation, as we are moving into the end of the year, and realizing maybe things kind of didn't go maybe the way we wanted it to go, how are y'all, how are you dealing with it? Are you in community? I mean, obviously, Leilani's reading books. Do you read books? Do you journal? Do you pray? Do you listen? And it's so funny, because today, last couple of days, I was listening to, I think it was either a TikTok reel, I don't know, I think it was either on IG or TikTok, and it was an old John P. Key song. And the song, it was like, oh, how wondrous is the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And so I went back and listened to it. And so like the last day or so, I've been listening to like old John P. Key songs. And we used to sing a lot of those songs in the choir that I was in. I was in a community choir. And then even when I was in the college choir, we sang a lot of his songs. And it kind of just took me back and into a spirit of like praise and worship. You know what I mean? And I wonder, like, do you listen to music? Like, what are the things that kind of shift your mood? Even sometimes, like for me, it was unintentional. Like, I just was like, ooh, I want to listen to this. And it just shifted my mood, and it took me back to like, ooh, like I remember when. And so what does that look like for some of you? What are the things that help to shift your mood when, when life is lifing, even outside of maintaining a spirit of gratefulness and a mindset of thankfulness? What are the things that y'all are doing to kind of shift your mood, or some things that maybe you're like, man, I hadn't thought about it. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I just it's interesting. Because I feel like sometimes, we could be going through and feel, isolated or alone, or feel like nobody else is kind of walking, and it may not be the same situation, but we're like, everybody's going through something.
Oh yes.
Yes,
That's right. Everybody's going through something. And depending on situations with me, I use a number of those things. Sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's music, sometimes, it is shifting from me to what can I do for someone else to kind of pull you out of that place, of focusing on your own stuff. A few years ago, I started, it was coming into the new year, and God had pressed it upon me to change how I respond to how are you doing, right? And I probably have only had one person ever ask me, why do I say that? And so at the time, and I was still deep in frustrations around, I should say, lack of co-parenting, an unhealthy co-parenting situation, and a number of other things, and he pressed upon me that when someone asked me, hey, how are you doing? My response would be, I am grateful.
I always pay attention to that. I'm like, oh.
And so, and I would be like, okay, I keep doing it. I've done it. And what it has done specifically, it has made me, because the whole point of what he was doing was getting me out of, the empty response. How people say, how you doing? And we just say, oh, I'm fine. Not really answering the question, but as a, it's a filler answer.
Yeah.
So then for me to say I'm grateful could not be a filler answer at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. So anytime I would say it, it would make me think about I am grateful and what am I grateful for? And then this is the
Mm-hmm.
tricky part, the things he would do. And so,
Mm-hmm.
working at the library, I can be in my office sometimes. I'm out a lot, but I can be in my office sometimes, depending on what I'm doing for hours on end,
Mm-hmm.
unless the ladies have a question. And so it would seem like on some days where I might be a little like, "Mm, mm, man, this whole situation, I'm frustrated, I'm tired of this." He would create a situation and I would end up at the desk more, or I would end
Mm.
up out more. Me being out more and at the desk more, what is going to happen more? People are going to come in. I'm going to greet the people. They're
Yep.
going to ask me how I'm doing. And I'm going to have to say I am grateful. Right. And so that very thing, he would use it, to make me shift, or as I'm wallowing or, basking in my frustration or whatever it was, to then shift other people, going back to that whole thing about sometimes you be doing stuff and something it ain't even
Mm-hmm.
about you. So now something may happen with staff or things get shifted where now I'm out there at the desk that day and I'm having to say to people, I am grateful. And
Mm-hmm.
then some people's reaction to me saying that. So then
Mm-hmm.
it's a responsibility, right? I'm like, okay, yes, I am grateful. Yes,
Yep.
God, I know I came in here frustrated today, but I am. I'm grateful. And this is why I'm grateful, you know. And so he would have me do that. And now I'm at this point where I'm like, are we gonna change it up? He's talking to me now about joy and
Yep.
and saying I am joyful. And I don't know if that's gonna be merged in, but just thinking about that, I thought about that right then from a few moments ago when you were talking, just to share that like that whole I am grateful thing, that's why it started. And that's why I've continued it. And it has been used. He has used it. I'm like, you know what? You are a trip, God. Because I could have just been in my office. I could have just sat in here for a few hours and been like, leave me alone. Don't say nothing. Irritated. But
Mm-hmm.
no, it would make me, I'm like, okay, I am grateful. Thank you. And by the time I end up getting to go into my office, I'm not in the state I was in before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm like, thank you, God. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I didn't waste this day frustrated.
I love it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I will be on. We talk frequently on Marco Polo, and she'd be at the bank, and they're like, "Oh, how you doing?" She's like, "I'm grateful, thank you. How you doing?" Or they'll be, you be in Walmart, and
Uh-huh.
they're like, "Hey," she's like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" They're like, "Oh, how you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I'm grateful, thank you." I'm like, "Oh, look at it," and it's so funny because I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna say that one day," and I never do. I be forgetting, but I love it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
So how do
Um,
you shift? What about you? Is it music? Is it journaling? Is it
all of the above.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
it's music. It's definitely music. And so here's the thing that I have found most recently is that since my life has shifted,
mhm.
some of the things that I used to do on a regular basis, I forgot.
Ah.
And so I'm
Mhm.
reacquainting myself with
Uh-huh.
myself. And
Mhm.
so little things like last night when I was listening to the music, it
Uh-huh.
took me back to moments where I would be in my house playing the music, dancing, worshiping, so like I spent some time last night, I have a 2020, I have basically a blank 12-month calendar,
Okay.
and it's a dry erase. And so I went through and like erased all the way through to October and redid. And so I was last night just kind of like in my element listening to worship music. And
Yes.
so that it's one of the things that I'm getting back into and remembering, even like in my car. So my car has always been a space, a sanctuary for me of worship and music and all kinds of stuff. Um and then prayer and journaling
Mhm.
also
Mhm.
have been really good spaces, right? And then quiet, like complete silence. have
Yeah.
also been, where I'm able to kind of recalibrate and shift my mindset. And so and sometimes even just intentionally talking out loud so I hear myself, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not defeated. This situation is not going to overtake me. I'm not going to punch them in the face. I mean,
I ain't gonna do it.
I ain't gonna do it. Like, I want to do it, but I'm not gonna do it. I ain't gonna do it. But just and I'm being facetious, but I'm also being real, because sometimes you want to, like, sometimes just, and so, like, really just kind of walking through and be like, okay. And so in those moments of walking through the prayer, and sometimes those moments are when I do the thankful prayers. And I just kind of like,
Mhm.
Lord, I thank you for my home. Lord, I thank you for provision. I thank you that my refrigerator has food in it. I thank you that my car has gas in it. I thank you for my car. And my car's
Yeah.
name is Grace. So I'm like, Lord, I thank you for Grace. I thank you that she's running. I thank you, and so then all of a sudden, I go into full-fledged praying, child. And so then all of a sudden, like, the mood is totally shifted.
Floodgates. Uh-huh.
Right. And so it just it varies, but I think I'm in a space of reconnection and rediscovery of some
Mhm.
things that I forgot about that I used to do in
Mhm.
my old house that I have not done in my new house. And so it's like, I got to get back to that. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um
Yeah.
So Leilani said, I think when I'm going through those tough moments, I write down what I'm thinking. I also have been crocheting, and it definitely helps to relax me. I love
Yes.
that. I
Yep.
love that. I don't know if you're still here. I see you, Michelle. I see Vontella kind of pop back in. If anybody else is here, what do you do to shift your mind, your attitude, your perspective? What are the things that, do you read the Bible? Do you read different books? I know sometimes reading is helpful as well. Like, I might read scripture, or I have a ton of books that I can refer to, that sometimes those are the books where I'm like, okay, you know what? I need to read this again.
Mm.
Um, so, that as well.
Yeah, I've
But
heard about the crocheting. I've heard a lot of people talk about crocheting is relaxing.
mhm.
Um, you know, Miss Lady, the only girl in the house has gotten into it a little bit, and she go to asking me, I'm like, baby, mama, that ain't mama's territory. I can't
Mhm.
help you with that. But I've heard so many people talk about, it's very relaxing.
Mhm.
You
You
know,
know who she could ask? Ain't Ma. That's who I learned from.
I forget about that.
Mhm.
I don't know. I forget about her and Aunt Chris.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, who are just here, Nyisha and I are cousins. So her mother and I are first cousins, and her
Mhm.
grandmother and my dad are brother and sister. But
Yep.
yeah, I want to say, when I was down there, I think it was her, or is who I think it's Aunt Mott. Does Aunt Becky, does she crochet?
I think maybe she does a little bit. Now, when
Yeah.
we were younger, I remember my and Aunt Christine
Mhm.
were the two that I remember the most.
Yeah.
But I
I
think so.
learned I learned years and years and years ago, and started, and I forgot. And I would love to take it back up again. Leilani says she learned how to do it on YouTube. But you know what I really want to make?
That's what.
One of the big crochet blankets that the people do with their hands.
Oh yes,
I'm like,
yes. Baby girl wants to do one of those too. She
mhm,
does. She wants to
mhm.
do one of those, and she taught herself on YouTube too. That's what she's been doing, watching videos and figuring out how to do that.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I see Danietta says walking, right, that she walks, writes, music, and meditate. All those. I love those. I do those too. Vontella says I listen to music. Danietta says exercise helps. Absolutely. And AZ says I'm there regarding the reacquainting of things. Fill a void space with life change recently and finding old things meaning more once again. Self-time important. Self-time is very important. And
Mhm.
that exercise and movement, I didn't, I just, like, in the past year I made the full probably revelation of why there were things in my childhood like I dealt with, and I didn't have like the earmarked signs of things. And then when I got in college, I started having some challenges processing things, right? And I didn't realize how much I wasn't moving. Right before that, I was honey, I basketball, softball all the time, all the time, all the time, dancing all the time, all the time, all the time. And so exercise is important and it does have a positive effect on our, mental health, our mental state of mind, our spirit, our being. And so I'm like that too. And I rediscovered I love dancing, I love moving, I love being physically active. But I had to check myself when we were doing that leadership program last, not this, not when it was January 22. And it was a back to school theme. And when I came home and we were telling the kids about it, and Cornelius was telling the kids how me and one other classmate shut the dance floor down and how I was in the dance battle and all that kind of stuff, right? And they were just like, "What, mommy? Oh my God!" And I sat there and went, "Wait a minute now." How is it that my children don't know that I love to dance?
I think I remember you telling me that, and they were like,
"Oh, we got to fix this." And I was like, "Wait, have I, the cares and just the situations of life just removed me that much that I'm not even dancing in my home?"
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That was I'm like, okay, my children have not seen me dance consistently.
Yep.
That they're that shocked to hear that. So I'm like, oh no. I was like, no, baby, your mama loves to dance.
Yeah.
And so they've learned that more in this past year, well, now 2 years almost, seeing me and their aunts, do more and more dancing. I found a video and we the three of us learned the Tamia shuffle. So they
Oh,
watch it a
shoot.
lot of times when we get together,
Okay.
we'll do that. And so, but it is that movement. And I'm like, this is actually something that not only do I love, but it's positive. It has positive effects for me. So I need to incorporate it into life more. And
Yeah.
it's actually a positive for everybody in the household when mommy's dancing. The more mommy dances, it's a good thing.
Listen, it's funny you say that because my history as a dancer,
Mhm.
and I had that same revelation. And I think I may have even had that like maybe recently as well within the last like year or two. Well, part of my revelation was um just the fact that like this little fluffiness that I'm getting has been because of lack of movement.
Mhm.
And even though I wasn't dancing, doing the work that I was doing with the pageant and doing the work that I was doing with the girls and youth ministry and teaching, I was moving, but specifically with my girls, like we would dance and all kinds of stuff. But like I had to kind of bring myself into remembering, like, and even like with my son, it's funny because he swear like I can't dance or like I'm not cool or I'm not hip. And I'm like, child, do you know like I was the hippest of the hip?
Right. Right. Like, are
Like
you kidding me?
I could hang with the best of them now. Now, child, take me a minute. But even earlier today, so I really need to look into taking a tap class because I was in the kitchen doing something and I was tapping. And
Okay.
he looked and he said, "What?" He said, "What's that?"
I can
And
see
so
his
I
face.
did it again. And so then he came out to look. And so, I did some stuff. And so for those of you who don't know my history, I was a dancer and I just say like my specialty was tap dancing when I used to compete, specifically in pageants. My talent was tap dancing.
Mhm.
And so, and of course, Nakia, she just popped in. And so
Uh-huh.
we used to dance together. And so, but that's another thing. Like, I think like and so this is a segue, but the same thing. Like, what are areas of your life that you need to reacquaint with? Right.
Yeah.
Like not, and I might even like take this a little bit further. I Speak Life Live, because I feel like, there are certain things that life has
Mhm.
kind of like shifted us out of that
Mhm.
are still part of like the essence of who we are, and we've lost it
Mhm.
in lifing. And so I wonder like what are the things, and you all can share in the comments, like what are the things that you may need to reacquaint yourself with. Like for me, I know it's dance. Like I know it's movement of my body. I know it's, playing my music in my home and dancing and worshiping, like things that just in the shift of life and in the transition, what are like there's some things that I need to, you know
Yeah.
remember, right?
Right.
Like life will cause you to forget.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's just like yesterday was like a moment where it was kind of like, a mile marker, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like a memory, like memory muscle memory, where it was just like, it was like it just clicked, and I was like, oh, I miss this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Yep.
I mean? And so I was like, singing, and I was doing all the things, and I was like directing the choir and writing, and what I'm saying? Like I was in my
Yes.
moment. And so
Yes.
this is really a question for you all to answer, but like, what are the things that
Yes.
maybe you've forgotten about that you need to reacquaint yourself with? That's like, man, I forgot
Yeah.
I really love that. Like I forgot that, like, I love doing this, or whatever. And so, and I'm not talking about things that are unhealthy, but things that
Right.
really are part just of the essence of who you are. Like, it's some stuff, like there's just this narrative going around now with those of you who are familiar with Nelly and Ashanti. And so I don't know the whole story. I don't know any of the story. I just know they back together. I don't even know if I remember when they was together. But people have just been talking about how happy they look. But
Mm-hmm.
there's this other narrative where the people are like, I don't care how happy they look, child. How happy they look, child. Don't you go back to that toxic ex? Like, there's that. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
a narrative around, like, yes, they're happy or whatever, but then the other one is like, don't trip, like, better, don't. And so I'm not saying, that's what I'm not saying. Like, I'm not saying go back to stuff that didn't mean you
Right.
any good or whatever, but the things that really bring you joy and make you
Yes.
smile and
The
just like
fruitful
light,
things.
yes, light your,
Yeah.
they just light your heart up. Like, what are those things that that you can be doing for the rest of the year and into the new year, you know that maybe you've forgotten about?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Absolutely. And it's so funny because sometimes our children are an opportunity to reconnect with some of those things, but the cares of life or the responsibilities we have the tendency, to push it aside and not so readily engage. But
Yeah.
it's really an opportunity to reconnect, with those things, like you said, that brought us joy. And that really, on some levels, because they brought us joy, were healthy then for us and had us in a better space and helped us navigate other things. You know, I realized, like, I didn't encounter any type of depression until I wasn't moving.
Mm.
That's basic, like that. And that was a revelation. I realized, although at that point I was dealing with, I mean, the reality of the situation was still the reality, but it wasn't until I wasn't active anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now there were some other things that brought it to the forefront, and I was like face to face with it. But as far as how I dealt with it, being face to face with it, I didn't have the things that had allowed Nyisha to
Yeah.
be vibrant and full and happy.
Yeah.
So it is important, I think, for us to find those things. Life can make things go dormant.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a sister friend that this conversation reminds me of. And we talked, and a few years ago, she would really be in a space, and she's been rediscovering those things, but like, she was so much in survival mode as a mom that she could not see herself outside of that space of the mom who was trying to survive and get past this thing and this trauma and this crisis. She couldn't
Yeah.
see herself past that. And
Yeah.
so in the past few years, she has rediscovered and realized, she was like, Naisha, do you realize I remember that I used to write poetry? I was like, girl,
Mm. Wow.
just these things, a whole creative side of her that
Mm-hmm.
4 years ago, if you asked her, she would have said, no, that's not her. It ain't never been her, right? But it
Yeah.
was so dormant because of the things she encountered as an adult, you know, that she had forgotten about them. So you're right. I
Yeah.
love that. What are those things? What are those things that the cares of life and the trials of our life have caused to go dormant that we need to wake up and reactivate, in our life? you know that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah. Latifa said driving and listening to music.
Okay.
Leilani said I recently got back into it. But for me, it's definitely art. I always love painting, drawing, and
Mm.
getting creative, but I stopped it for a long time to put someone else first. That's good.
Ah, yep.
She said, I always loved reading. I always used to love reading, and I definitely want to get back into it. I used to finish reading books in days when I was in high school.
Oh my God.
Um, Nakia says, yeah, I realized not running for a week put me in a foul mood. So I got back out
Mhm.
there for the release. Wow.
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
Leilani says, I want to get back into writing. Yeah, I love that. And I think, like you said, we don't realize how much it affects us when we're just in the throes of life. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so sometimes you don't even recognize, like, man, like your mood has shifted. You just don't know what caused it to shift. And so
Mhm.
I love that Nakia was able to immediately identify it because, she's been running for a while now. Hey, Patricia, how are you? She's been running for a while now, but I think we really do want to get to that point where when we're no longer doing a thing, we can
Right.
immediately recognize the shift in our mood, in our behavior, in whatever it is, and get back into it. Because sometimes, as you said, life happens and you just get caught up in survival mode, and so everything else gets thrown out the window. And it's
Mhm.
like, man, and then it takes something, like listening to a song on a
Mhm.
TikTok or an Instagram reel and then playing the song and remembering, like, man, I used to love this.
Yes.
You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
I know the folks say, we probably shouldn't be, listening to all this secular music and stuff, depending upon what it is. But sometimes even in the car when the radio stations, are playing like the old school jams and the mixes and child, like they get going, child be in the car, I'll be like having my
Yep.
own little dance party, child be doing, just and it's like my mood just, you know what I'm saying, just shifts.
Yep.
And 9 times out of 10, I'm in the car by myself because I'm sure my son will be looking at me like, really, mom? Um, but like it just the songs come on. It's normally like a 5 or a 6 o'clock jam, or sometimes it's a
Uh-huh.
midday jam. So it might be like lunchtime, and they're playing like the good old school jams. And when I tell you I'm jamming, child, I'm having a whole like the people who only dance in their chair. I'm like one of those people in the car. Like I'm having a whole jam session, and I'm like, man, and sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I could like find something like this. I'd be trying to look sometimes on YouTube and try the music that come up. I'm like, never mind, I'll just wait for it to come on the radio. Because sometimes how you don't realize until you hear the real song that you like, wait, that ain't even what they say on the radio. Like, I'm gonna stick with the radio version because
Yes. That'd be the thing. I'm like, okay, can we just go back to the radio version? I don't need that version right now in my life. Can we just go back
mm-mm,
to the radio
I'm
version?
good. I'm
But
good.
yes, yes, it's so
I'm
so
good.
important.
Hmm.
Oh my goodness. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
So
But
yeah. So I just, I think it's important for us to, just have those conversations and to kind of just, identify, sometimes just really identifying like where we are and being okay with like saying like, you know what, like things didn't technically turn out the way I thought that they would turn out. But there's still areas, lots to be, grateful for. And then
yes.
even outside of that, like you said, what are the gifts and the opportunities? So some of you who are just joining, um, when we opened up this conversation, one of the questions I had was, how do you stay in a space of gratitude when life is lifing? And two questions or two things that Nyisha shared was asking the question, what is the gift and the opportunity in this situation? And so a lot of times we're only focused on the negative, how it has affected us, how we hate it, we don't like it, we don't know why God allowed it to happen, the conversations we have, y'all, we all know. And for her, it's
Mhm.
like what it shifts into, and even sometimes we hear people say, well, instead of always asking like, why is this happening, you ask, what is it that is trying to teach me? What is it that I'm supposed to learn? What is God saying to me in this? And so another way of saying that is, what is the gift and the opportunity in this, right? And I even look at this, and I didn't realize it before, but it's really even kind of like, the personal SWOT analysis, right? The strengths,
Mm.
weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. And so it's like, what are the opportunities, that can come out of a situation, and what are the strengths, right? Or what are the gifts? What are the gifts and the opportunities in this? And the other one was just this idea around the 3-to-1 ratio, where whatever, is bothering you, or if it's a person or whatever, what are 3 things, positive things that you can focus on to kind of shift yourself from, the negative to the positive. And so, we had
you
just,
just
go ahead.
no, you just as you were talking, honey, about that SWOT analysis, cousin, you just made me think about something. So find yourself in a space, and I'm sitting there thinking, now I got to write it down. Like, what weakness do I feel is being exposed, which usually puts us in a negative space, right? So in this situation, what weaknesses of mine do I feel are being exposed, right? And how am I responding to it? What strengths of mine can help me in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
What gift or what opportunity or gift is in this situation? And
Mm-hmm.
what can I be thankful for in this situation? You just gave me a honey. You just was sitting there talking. I just got a whole new use to flip on the SWOT analysis when you in going through a situation.
Mm-hmm.
Honey, let me write this down. Go ahead, cousin.
Well, after you write it down, child, share it with us so we can have it too. Um,
Yes.
but yes, look for the lesson and the blessing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Patricia says it, which means that I don't ever have to come out anytime empty-handed. Absolutely. And
That's right.
most
That's
times
right.
we don't come out empty-handed. It's really the perspective. You know what I mean? Like, most times if we look at it, there's always something to learn. There's always some type of opportunity. There's always, like, on the other side of it, it's normally while we're going through it that we're like, this sucks. This is, whatever. Like, we just have those moments. But normally on the other side of it, it's like, oh Lord, you saved me from that. You saved me from a big one. Like, I didn't know it
Mm-hmm.
then, but I know it now. Or it
Mm-hmm.
might, and sometimes it might even be a few years where you're like, it's not always immediately, the lesson in the, the blessing in the lesson and all that, little cliche things that we say.
Yeah.
But there's always, we never come out empty handed when God is in it. Even
Never.
when, and here's the other part, even when he takes, we know that God is a God of multiplication, that anything that he takes away from us, when he gives it back to us, it's greater than what he took.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're always going to be blessed from it. But sometimes it's like, we just have to, we got to ride it out. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, sometimes it's not meant for us. Obviously, we have to trust him through the process and all of that. Sometimes it's kicking and stumping, just like our kids do.
Mm-hmm.
But on the end, you recognize, like, man, you really were looking out for me. Like, oh, I dodged a bullet there. Or, like, I really didn't want to let that go, but I'm glad that you, in some instances, forced me to let it go, because
Mm-hmm.
what was waiting for me down the road on the other side a year from now is so much greater. It's so much better, right? And it may not necessarily be a tangible thing. It could be more peace. It could be greater joy. It could be a greater perspective around, like, how we move,
Yes.
from an attitude of gratitude and thankfulness and appreciation. It could be a greater sensitivity for forgiveness and compassion. Like, some things, it may not necessarily be things that we can hold in our hand. But some of it is, just those character building things that, that God is developing in us, as Az said up here, where, we get a chance to, she says, I learned the different ways to pray as I learned the different characteristics of him. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes it's really even just nothing other than I got to know him in a greater way.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that taps into, and this could be a whole nother conversation. That taps into getting in a place where we really truly believe and walk in Romans 8 and 28.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, really getting there, understanding, like, the all things
Mm-hmm.
working
Mm-hmm.
for our good,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Wait, together.
Right. Exactly. To work together for our good.
Mm-hmm.
That's a,
Mm-hmm.
oh goodness, like I said, that's a whole nother conversation of really getting there. That's the beginning of it, like when we talk about the lessons and the blessings, those gifts and opportunities, all that kind of stuff, you know, that's a whole nother level of us
Yeah.
being able to like, and that does bring peace, and sound-mindedness, and
Mm-hmm.
a ability to walk in a new level of joy, to really, really walk in that.
Yeah. It does. It
This has
does.
been good. It's been good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's interesting because um some of the ladies know and but the theme for I Speak Life Live is it had to happen. And so and so
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
initially thought that God was going to take me to Romans 8 and 28.
Mhm.
But he has taken me somewhere else. But at the time, it was just like, when he gave it to me, I kind of was like, "Are you sure?
He sure. I feel you. Like,
You sure
I'd
this
be
is what
like,
you want?"
but we could have done it a different way though. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
We could have. No, but it had to happen.
It
Oh,
had
that's
to
gonna be
happen.
that's gonna be wide open.
Yeah.
Y'all gonna be wide open. He gonna crack that thing wide open.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. He's already been giving me the nuggets and just um
Yes.
different pieces that I'm just like, man, okay. I'm like, you really giving this to me in a way that I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right, well, this is what we doing. This is what we doing. But
It had to happen.
and sometimes we
To
don't
get
think.
on the other side of that, to get on the other side of it had to happen, because when we sit in being so frustrated with why did this have to happen, it's like, well, it had to happen to get. Ooh, I'm a hush. Just gonna hush.
Uh-huh. Yep. So it's
Yeah.
there's definitely some things that God wants to speak intentionally to the women who are going to be in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm excited about that. But I think it's just just kind of circling back to our initial conversation, as the year begins to close out, just being mindful of the things that you need to get reacquainted back with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Being mindful of the gifts and the opportunities that can come from the
Mm-hmm.
space that you're currently in, if it's not the ideal space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about how to maintain an attitude of gratitude, staying in a mindset of gratefulness, even maybe practicing when people ask how you're doing, you say grateful, just to continue to remind yourself that there is always something to be grateful for, right?
Yes.
Or just to be, challenged when people say, "Oh, really? Like, well, what is there to be grateful for?" And then on the spot, you got to be able to identify, not only just for them, but for you, what exactly it is that you're grateful for. And so, it's, I just, and it's interesting because not necessarily because this is the month of Thanksgiving and gratitude and all of that, but really because I know that towards the end of the year, we can start to feel some kind of way if the year has not yet turned out the way we thought it would.
Right.
Right. If things are not happening the way we wanted it to, and sometimes it could be better, sometimes it could be worse, I don't know. But a lot of times it's just like, man, like I thought that I was going to work out a little bit more, like, child, I still got this belly, or like I still can't fit my clothes, and then again we go down that spiraling cycle of all the things that are not going well, but you're healthy, right? And you got
Yeah.
enough money to keep buying that food you keep eating. You got a job to, what I mean? So it's like, less like, yes, maybe I'm not where I want to be, but I'm grateful that even though I keep eating these snacks, I got money to buy the snacks, and I got a job that give me money to buy the snacks, and I got a car that keep taking me to go get these snacks. Like, you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, let's kind of spin it to the point of where, no, maybe it didn't, But what's the gift and the opportunity? Where, what's the 3-to-1 ratio? How can you reacquaint yourself with the things that can help shift your mind, your mood,
Yeah.
even just what you say. And so, maybe you need to focus on doing, prayers of thanksgiving. And so when you go into
Mhm.
prayer, it's only like you don't talk about
Mm.
asking for nothing. It is a prayer of thanksgiving. It is going down the list of everything that that you can think of. If you need the book, child, get the book so you can have 30 things to start out with. My brain, my tongue, my eyes, my ears, my hands, my feet, like things that we take for granted, my internal organs, my respiratory system, my circulatory system, my
Yes.
digestive system, that it works well, that the stuff is
Yes.
working through my body the way it needs to. I'm thankful for food. I'm thankful for healthy food, that I don't have to eat junk, that, even as costly as some things might be, that I'm thankful that I actually have money to buy that.
Yeah.
Like you start to see the discrepancy and you start to see the difference in the haves and the have-nots, that there's some things, the healthy stuff, child, that costs money. It costs money. And so when we start to think about, I thank you that I have a sound mind, that I thank you that when I almost lost
Mm.
my mind, you kept my mind. I thank you that I can
Yes, goodness.
keep my mind stayed on you, and that I can be in perfect peace. I thank you that I have a sense of smell. I thank you that I can smell and I can taste, and that I
Mhm.
can feel, and that I can touch, and that I can hug, and that I have,
Mm.
like that I am not desensitized to, the worries and the different things that are going on, that like I can still love and I have compassion. Do y'all see where I'm going with this? Like
Oh,
when you
yes.
take the time to just I challenge y'all tonight, when before you go to bed, make tonight's prayer about Thanksgiving, everything that you're
Yes.
grateful for. And I don't want you to stop until I don't even want you to think about stopping until you hit 30.
Hmm.
You just
Hmm.
make a list of 30 things. And to be honest, it shouldn't be that hard. Even if you just start with your body, your toes, your hands, your fingers. You start with, your feet, the fact that you can walk, the fact that you have that your legs, your knees, your hips work, that the fact that, you can find 30 things on your body. And then when you look around your house, you can probably find another few things. I'm grateful that I have a stove that works, a refrigerator that keeps my food cold. I have a deep freezer. I have snacks. I have good food that I can eat, fruit that didn't go bad. I have a clean house. I have things to clean my house. Like, can we
Yes. Come on.
so I feel like, we want to be intentional about the decisions that we make, because life is going to life, y'all. Like it just,
It
you
is.
know, it's gonna life, and it's gonna do what it's gonna do. And I think, for us to be intentional about not letting that thing overtake us, you know what I'm saying? Even being in a space where maybe you're not able to celebrate the holiday the way that you want to celebrate it. If you celebrate the holiday, maybe you're not able to, you know um do things for Christmas the way you wanted, like whatever it is, like as
Mhm.
we are closing out this year, things may not be the way that it always has been. And what does it look like for us to be intentional around making sure that that thing doesn't overtake us, that we nip that
Mm.
thing before it nips us? Because if it nips us, child, it's going to take us. And if we can be honest, sometimes it take us about a week or two to snap out of it. We like, dang, like I done been here for about a week or two. I gotta snap out of this thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not
Yep.
for some of us it's immediate, and then for some of us it's not.
Right. So true.
So yeah, so I don't know. I didn't know that it was 9:40. Like we just been grooving.
We have. We've been coasting.
Yeah, literally. Um and so, I know we try to not be here all night. It's not 21 days of prayer.
Ah.
But do you have any, other thoughts? Ladies, what are your thoughts around what I shared, what Nyisha has shared? But would you have any last thoughts before I feel like let's try to close it out by 9:45. So just, be mindful of time. Um,
I don't know about thoughts. Well, Patricia said she secured her hotel last night too.
oh
But
good.
um Just really cultivating that space. Not like you said earlier, not just this time of the year, but being
Yeah.
able to walk in gratitude and gratefulness all year long.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Um, and grateful for another opportunity. You know, like you
Yeah.
said, some things might not, maybe some things that didn't go the way we wanted or end at the level of progress or whatever that we expected or would have desired. But it did make whatever progress we did make. We did evolve through whatever we've gained, whatever experience we've gained. We've learned whatever we've had the opportunity to learn, and now we have another opportunity to continue to move forward. You know, and that's priceless to be grateful for. That's a grateful, like seriously, another opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Gratitude list is important. It is. I'm
it's so very
writing this
important.
out right now so y'all have it. Take some time to spend your prayer time this
Mhm.
evening focused on what
Yes.
you are thankful for.
Yes.
Um, and anytime you start feeling in a funk, I would challenge you to start focusing on gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
What are you grateful for? And don't let up until you feel that shift. There's a shit, you'll feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, like once, you initially you just start out because you're like, okay, Lord, I thank, because you're forcing it because you're like, I can't stay here.
Mm-hmm.
But then after a while, it just your stuff just start coming and you just start going, and next thing you know, like it's like, oh goodness, like okay. But that's
Yep.
the purpose of it. You know what I mean? Take some time to shift. So that you can be in a mindset, and really whether things are good, bad, or indifferent right now is really not the focus. It's really just it's lifestyle, rhythm, routine, and developing a lifestyle of gratitude no matter what. Not just, oh, I'm only doing this when I'm feeling kind of funky. No, and I'm not only doing it when I'm feeling grateful and when things are
Mhm.
good. I'm doing it all the time, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. In all things give thanks,
Right.
right? For this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning
That's
you.
right. Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, spend some
Hmm.
time. Oh, and then let's see, it should be at least 30 things you list. Hey, Faye. Okay, I'm gonna put that there, and then I'm gonna put this here. This evening, focused on what you're thankful for, should be at least 30 things you list. Okay, y'all coming in? Where y'all been? Let me see.
Mm.
It says it helps me to focus, shift my focus. A pre says, yes, I had to do that this week. Out of nowhere, I was focused on everything that seems to be going wrong. I had to remember the scripture you said, all things are working, and saying, okay, what am I learning through this? Listen, I love it.
Yep.
I love it. Faith
Absolutely.
says, grateful for daily tender mercies to begin again, things to remember. Hold on, Um, let me see if I can pull that up on YouTube. To look at the actual comment because it cut it off. I'm gonna leave that up there just so y'all can see that. Oh, alive to just be. Okay, that's what it is. Grateful for daily tender mercy to begin again. 30 days to remember I'm alive to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. Hey, Faye. I tagged you in a Facebook group, so I'm glad you got the notification here on YouTube. Because I know you were asking. Um, but yeah, so I'm glad y'all joined us tonight.
Yes,
Um,
indeed.
Tonight was a good conversation. Again, these are unscripted, so we don't really be knowing what we're gonna talk about. We just kicking it. You know what I
We
mean?
are.
Just kicking it. And for a while, it was just the two of us. And so we was, we was having our own cousin conversation. So and then y'all came on in and joined the party. Um
Mhm.
so we will be, are we gonna come back next Saturday?
Yeah, I think we could.
Okay. So this is our pilot, our pilot program, our pilot show. It's a three episode
Yeah.
pilot show of our Girl Talk After Dark. And so the goal is, we may come back in December, but the goal is just to kind of figure the flow out and what we want to do and how we want to do it, and really to make sure you all know that we're here. And so you can kind of get back into the swing of thing of, joining us while we're live. Um, if you missed last week we had a really good conversation, and really that was, I think it was a little bit more fun, and this was fun too. It's all fun to me. But we really
Mhm.
talked about, we talked about menopause. We talked
We
about hot
did.
flashes, night sweats, child.
Yes, we did.
We talked about the books that we were reading, what was on the list, so you can go back and look at that.
Yep.
But literally there's no telling, what we're going to talk about. It just really is just just some girlfriend time, just for us to get together and just to chat. And so if there are, conversations or things that maybe you want to talk about, or questions that you have, let us know. You can share them in the comments and tag either one of us, so that we can keep that in mind. But we try not to script it, simply because it really is based on, who's here, what we're talking about, how we start the conversation, and really kind of even sometimes like what's going on,
Mhm.
so
Yep.
so yeah, so we will be back next Saturday at 8, and then we'll probably take a 2 or 3 week break, and we might come back. I know we won't be live the week after that because that's Thanksgiving, and then the week after that is I Speak Life Live. And
That's
so
right.
maybe we'll come back in, I don't know. We'll look at it and see what it looks like for us to come back in December. But again, we've been here. This is week 2, and so week 3, and so we'll look at the ratings and see what they say. If if we can come back, and start our official season.
Oh yes.
But this has been good though. This has been good.
Yes.
And I think both of us have said, like, it's like taking the stress away of trying to have something scripted and trying to figure out what we're gonna say and how we're gonna say. Like, it's just, we just kicking it.
Yep. And we even talked about it like during the week. You got anything you want to share? You got anything that's on you? Was like, nah, let's just roll with it and
Mm-hmm.
just roll with it.
Yep. Yep.
Just
That's
roll
it.
with it.
Um so yeah, so I'm trying to think and see if there's anything else here. I'm looking on both Instagram, not Instagram, but Facebook and YouTube. Okay. So with that being said, I guess we can head out. You all have a good night, and y'all sleep well. Make sure you do your prayer of thankfulness tonight before you ask God for anything. You need at least 30 things that you need to be in conversation with him about, around what you
Yes.
are thankful for.
Yes.
And I would even love tomorrow for you all to just check in here, or in the group. If you're on the Facebook group, check in the Facebook group, and and let us know that you did it. And I'd love to know, like, if you felt the shift, like at what
Yeah.
point you felt the shift. Um, just because I think we need to we need to be intentional about that, right? And sometimes just from the point of, and I think you mentioned this, Nyisha, like just going to God and just asking him for all the things, right? Like sometimes it's just like, we automatically, Father, we just, I thank you, Lord, but Lord, I need, it's like, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and you got to handle this, and you got to do this, and Lord, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and do this, and then this is, and after you finish that, then I need you to do that, and then I need you to go over there and handle this, and then I need you to take care of them. And so it's like, I want you tonight, like you can talk to him about that tomorrow, but tonight I want you just to be in conversation about what you are thankful for.
I love it.
Just that attitude of gratitude, shifting your mindset. And then I'd love for you to sit and see if there's anything that he has to say to you.
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
because I think it's important. A lot of times we, you know, will say like, you know, I'm not hearing from him. And those who are part of my inner circle or who are in my tribe, you already know. I'm like, okay, well, when's the last time you sat quiet enough to hear?
Right.
You know, because sometimes it's not that he's not talking, it's that you talking too much. You haven't given him an opportunity to say anything. And so, yes, it's
Yes.
intentional around you sharing at least 30 things you're grateful for. There's intentionality around that, not just to take up space. And to be honest, it shouldn't take you long to do that. But then after that, sit and say, Lord, you know, is there anything that you want to share with me? Is there any passage of scripture you want me to read? Because sometimes he may speak to you through his word. You know, you may not necessarily hear him in a specific way. Like I know for me, sometimes it's audible. Like I could kind of like hear him. It's not a sensing. It's a like I can hear him talk to me. That may not
Right.
be how he talks to you. But the only way you'll learn is if you sit quietly enough to flow with him so that he can kind of guide you. And so you may sense him saying, you know, I want you to read Psalm 23. And so when you read Psalm 23, then whatever you get from it, that may be his word for you from the night. You know, it may be about protection, it may be about, you know, being your provider, it may, you know, whatever it may be, but um just sit quietly and listen.
I love that.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
So you all, any last words, Nyisha, before we shut down?
No, just enjoy those 30, doing those 30 things and that prayer of thanks. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us tonight. Hope you all have a
Mhm.
fabulous weekend.
Yes. All right, ladies. We will see y'all next Saturday, same time, same place. That sounds familiar, right? Um, Girl Talk After Dark, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Put it on your calendars. And again, y'all have a good night, and we will see you next Saturday.
Bye. Good night, ladies.
Good night.